next speaker, Rob Granader. He is the CEO of MarketResearch.com. They are a global market intelligence product. They offer global market intelligence products and services. And I actually would encourage everyone to go to Robert's LinkedIn because they have a really cool, in terms of marketing, a 90-second video of what MarketResearch.com does. I love that video, and everyone should have one of those on their LinkedIn for their company and what it does.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Rob is going to talk to us today about predicting trends, consumer research, and business data enabling for educated corporate decisions. Thank you for being here, Robert.
You bet. Thank you. Okay, well, my name is Rob Granader, and I'm CEO of MarketResearch.com and all the attendant companies that we have, including the Fredonia Group and Package Facts and Simba Information and Profound. And thanks for taking the time to join this presentation. And I want to talk about the importance of market research and how it works to help you make better business decisions. And one note about the sort of the ubiquity of market research is there has not been a presentation here, and probably not one that you've seen before, that doesn't at some point quote market research, have some piece of market research in it, because it really gives you a sense of where you are, a sense of the state of play, a sense of where the market might be going. And so what it often does is it backs up someone's position on something. And so market research is ubiquitous. You see it all the time. You may not notice it as market research, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. So in this presentation, I'm going to walk you through how you can use market research to help better guide your business and really understand the bigger picture of the market that you're in and how these market forces are going to affect you. Whether you need a deck to raise money for a startup, or conduct diligence, or deciding whether to go public, or just determining and trying to determine which way the commercial winds are blowing, you need market research to help you guide the way. We are in the business of telling companies where things are going to be 18 months from now. Right? We can always look backwards, but it's all about looking forward and finding out where it's going to be so you can either avoid the pitfalls or seize the opportunities. Should you launch that product? Should you enter that market? Should you buy that company? Should you go public? Where should companies place their bets going forward? And whether it's a difficult task in any time, but it's a most important task in these turbulent times. And these have been turbulent times. And what's interesting about where we are now in the post-COVID world is the COVID crisis that we're just emerging from is very different from the past two crises that we have, September 11th, 2001, as well as the 2008-2009 financial crisis. Because after those two crises, people felt poorer. People were bracing themselves for a bad economy. People were bracing themselves for bad news. And at the end of this crisis, what's really, really different is we are expecting a robust economy. There is so much cash out there. There is stimulus out there. There are low interest rates out there. There is a stock market that's soaring out there. And with all these things happening, people are optimistic about what's next. And what they do is we are in the optimism business, I say sometimes, because we are in the business when people feel good about where they're going, about what to do next, they're more apt to buy companies, invest in the future, and make that pivot into a new market. The other thing that's different about this crisis is that we made lots of personnel changes, not in our company, but all of us who are on this call and around the world over the past 14 months. And those changes that we made are really going to affect the markets going forward because of all the things that we did. For example, the pet population craze. Everybody knows about this. Everybody bought pets during the pandemic. And what happens is when this pandemic's over, people are not giving these pets away, right? They're going to keep the pets and they're going to have all the attendant costs with them, just like they had over the past few years. So the past 18 months have seen a surge in pet products, pet toys, pet food, pet leashes, pet all things related to pet, right? Including pet insurance. And so all that stuff doesn't get returned after this. We continue to do that. And so so that trend will continue. Also, we really invested in our homes in a way that we never have in the past. We built decks, we carpeted rooms, we bumped out walls that we didn't like. Because it's one thing to have a house and have a room that you pass through at 6 o'clock at night on the way to the refrigerator and not like that, as opposed to a room that you're in for 14 months and you're looking at the walls every day. And at some point you say, you know what? I don't like this room anymore. I want to repaint it. I want to change the couch. I want to change this wall. I want to redo the windows. And we did all that over the past 18 months because so many of those folks were required workers. And so because of that, we're not moving from these houses. Either we moved from them already, or we're sticking with it. And gardens were built in the backyards, and those need to be maintained. And so the garden market's going to continue to grow. The price for materials has gone up: lumber, paint, roofing, siding, all these things. And then, of course, with the labor crunch out there, it's getting even tougher to continue to do these types of things. And so it's going to be interesting, because so much of what we've done already is going to drive the next 18 months to 2 years of the market, including things like all those heaters that restaurants bought. People said, wow, those are really going to go to waste. They're not going to go to waste, because restaurants realize that in the wintertime, they can expand their seating by having people sit outside. And so it's not just the heaters that went up. We had a huge propane crisis last year because of all these heaters that everybody had. And so we did lots of work outside, and our neighbors are going to want to do that work next year. And so all of the trends that we see going forward, a lot of them are baked in already by the stuff that we've already done. Now, the great COVID condiment crisis. If you've heard of this, then you'll know what I'm talking about. But what market research allows you to do is widen your lens and see the entire landscape. And there are certain things that we can see by taking a step back. And market research providers are uniquely positioned to do that versus doing it yourselves or doing it within your own company. For example, last year, with the restaurant restrictions that went into place, we could see the plastic packaging costs were going to go way up, because everything needed to carry out, everything needed a container. What we should have seen also is the great COVID condiment crisis, right? Because what happened was when people switched to takeout rather than dining in at restaurants during COVID, the demand for condiment packages surged, creating a nationwide shortage, literally a shortage of ketchup packets. Restaurants everywhere went on a mad dash to obtain ketchup package, and we hoarded them like they were toilet paper earlier in the pandemic, or whether like they were hand sanitizer earlier in the pandemic. Heinz Ketchup announced a 25% increase in the production of more than 12 billion packets a year to accommodate this increased demand. And that kind of stuff is exactly what market research does. Staying ahead of these market changes, these swings, it's a real challenge for business. And it's not always easy to pivot with just your internal data. External data and outside perspective can really help, and market research really helps you prepare for that. Now, history rhymes. Now, how can you stay ahead of the market? It's about looking forward as well as looking back. It was Mark Twain, I believe, who said that history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Whether it's the ketchup package shortage, supply chain disruption, a hot new technology that disrupts you, there's always something new, and business leaders, and as business leaders who are on this call and elsewhere, really need to stay in front of it. And accessing the right data to help you make that decision and what's coming next and help you adapt, that is market research to a core. But what you need is a reliable outside perspective that can help you overcome what we call these internal knowledge gaps, as well as the internal biases that lurk within your own teams. So companies have more and more data now than they ever had before. The question often is, which data do you believe? Which trends do you follow? And it's really becoming a huge issue for companies. And the outside perspective helps you balance against what you've already determined inside. Now, seeking clarity. What is your story? How do you see the future? So you have to remember that it's a story. It's not just numbers. It's not just, is the market going to go up? Is the market going to go down? It's a narrative that you need to know why consumers feel a certain way about your product, why consumers feel a certain way about an industry. And at marketresearch.com, well, so what I'll say is that it matters then who writes the story, right? So there's lots of places now, publishers that are producing content out there, and maybe the numbers are close to what they might be, but the narrative is not right. The story is not right. So it's very hard to write a story about how to market something in a US grocery store if you've never been in a US grocery store. And so at marketresearch.com, we work with probably 10,000 companies a year across different industries, whether it's food and beverage or pets or education or technology or tech or packaging or construction. And for the past 20 years, we've been asking them questions about why market research matters and how do they use it, because the use has changed over time. You know, one of the things fogging up the windows to help us see forward and help us see back is this ubiquity of information on the web and also within our own C drives. And what happens is there's so much data. The question becomes, again, how do you do it? Remember, narrative and numbers. That's the important thing about market research. So on a Google results page, when you search on how big is the market for bottled water, on a Google results page, we all look the same. And that means you got to dig deeper, right? So I could create a company tomorrow called Coca-Cola One, and you could search on Coca-Cola tomorrow, and it could have the real Coca-Cola, and it could have Coca-Cola One, and you don't know what the difference is, because on a Google results page, we all look the same. So you have to dig deeper. You got to go deeper and behind the research and find out who's producing it, what's their methodology. And that's part of what marketresearch.com helps companies do. Back in the day, market research was simply a tracking service to see how customers were using somebody's product. But now, so many companies have so much access to so much data that, as this one Fortune 1000 company said to us, external research is essential. We can't operate in a vacuum, and we can't do much of anything without market research. It's our eyes and ears on the market. Without it, we can't make the multi-million-dollar decisions we need to make. So don't get caught in the echo chamber. Get the outside perspective and help you figure out, where the market is going. Now, predicting change. It's not just being ready about the next crisis and avoiding the next crisis. It's also about catching the next wave, the next market boom, the shifting attitudes and consumer behavior, and getting inside the mind of the consumer, which is so crucial. As another one of our clients, this large chemical company, said that industry studies help them get a macro level view of their industry and get a thumbs up or thumbs down sense of how various products and market segments will perform in the future. Even though they're a large company and they could ask questions of their customers all day long, their customers may not want to tell them the truth. An independent source can get better answers, better data, different answers. Ask the questions that you can't ask to your customers or your suppliers. And that's really crucial, and a really crucial way that people use market research going forward. As I said, tracking industry changes is really what was the crucial point about how market research really started. And it's about getting more hooks in the water, right? You want to fish, you want to catch more fish, you need more lines in the water. And I've heard clients come to us and say, you know what, I don't trust an outside company because you don't know our industry as well as we know our industry. And that is true for some, but while we aren't consultants, we do track these industries and the analyses. We've been following them for years and years and years. And market research, what it does is it opens your eyes to the products and trends beyond just what you're asking about, beyond your own company, beyond your own team, and helps you become aware of whatever the disruptive variables that are out there that you may not see. The technologies, the consumer, shifting consumer preferences, growing and shrinking markets, rising competitors, new regulations, all those things that need tracking. And how you use the data is individual, obviously, to each company. But if you think you and your team understand all the major trends and drivers and inhibitors to growth, you're missing something, because how you stack up against your competitors, the only way to get that is through an outside source, because people are going to tell you what you want to hear too often than not. And market research is one of the things that helps you track all these different variables. You get a much more objective view of your company and your company's position. Are you still relevant in the marketplace? What is your exact market share? What are the strengths and weaknesses of your competitors that you couldn't ask those questions about? And how are your competitors using market research to help them track it? You just don't want to be left out of that loop. So will you be ready for the next catch-up crisis that might hit your industry? The package shortage that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation is just one tiny example of a market swinging wildly based on forces that in many ways, when you step back, was predictable, but in the beginning, as you're going into it, is not predictable. And there are a host of significant changes happening in your industry and in these markets around the world that are affecting, and obviously with a more interconnected world, markets outside of your geographic region are even more important. Some things that changed during the pandemic, e-commerce took off in a big way, online learning, the birth rate dropped, the domesticated pet population surged, as I said. Families invested in their homes and yards and gardens, and commercial office spaces may never see the same level of demand again. And so the question is, how do these macro trends and the micro trends within your industry affect you, your company, and your industry? When a big change hits your industry, will you be ready? Or will you be taken by surprise? What's your contingency plan? Is it in place? Market research helps you get a solid game plan for all these incredibly uncertain times, as well as the ones that actually may be even more predictable. So then the question becomes, okay, so I need market research, and what are the different flavors that I can get it? And there's lots of stuff. You can get big reports, you can get smaller pieces of reports, you can get custom, you can get slices, and it really depends on your need, and really sometimes the type of customer that you are. So marketresearch.com helps companies find the trustworthy numbers and narratives depending on their industry, depending on the region of the world, depending on where they are in their evolution as a company. And if you aren't familiar, here's a couple easy ways to access it. First of all, there are these ready-made reports. We call them syndicated reports or off-the-shelf reports, and they're written by analysts around the world. We have millions of them on marketresearch.com. And the issue with it on off-the-shelf, oops, I lost my lighting for a second there. The issue with an off-the-shelf report is that you can have a Goldilocks problem, right? You can have a thing where it might have a little bit too much of this or not enough of this. And the question is, can you find it just right? And make no mistake about it, market research is expensive stuff. And so you want to get the answer with the right report. And oftentimes, a full syndicated report gets you closer to what you need, and it's enough. But sometimes you just need a small piece of it, maybe a section or a chapter or a chart. You can go to profound.com and just get slices of reports there. And that might be good, especially if you're new to market research, you haven't bought it before, but it helps you just sort of get a taste of what you might need. And it may get you the exact answer you want without the whole macro, piece of it. And what's interesting about Profound is it's really good for people that we call project-based customers. These are customers who care about a project on Monday and a different project on Tuesday and a different project on Wednesday. And so it's often a bank or a consulting firm. And you don't want a full discussion of the solar energy market. You just want to know who the top 10 competitors are, because you're about to invest in a solar energy company. You're about to look at them. You're about to take one public. You're just doing diligence on it. So that's really when you need Profound and a slice. But if you're a subject-based customer, like we call them, which is someone who works at craft and cares about cheese all day long, you want a knowledge center, which gives you everything that we produce in the cheese or the dairy market all year long, because you want to know cheese, and that's a subject-based customer, and you may want a knowledge center for that. And then, of course, there's custom research. And custom research is when we go out and do real primary research. We go out and just do it just for you. It's more expensive, it takes longer to do, but you get an answer to a specific question that may not be covered in one of the reports. And we do the data that's just for you and can't be shared by anybody else.
Right, Robert, we just have 1 minute. Oh, you're almost done.
I'm on my last slide. I'm there. Thank you, though. So just remember that on a Google results page, we all look the same. And so you got to dig deeper. It isn't enough to just find something on Google results page and just go buy it from there. If a market report is a mass-produced report and it's just numbers, you really need a narrative to get around where the market's going. Get an outside perspective. Don't get caught in the echo chamber of your own company or your own industry. And don't get caught flat-footed. Get a roadmap for the future made by a company that you can trust, because trust is the coin of the realm, because putting things up on the web, as you know, is very easy to do. Thanks so much. Here's our information at marketresearch.com. Feel free to email me or Granader at marketresearch.com for specific questions. Glad to answer it. And thanks so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Robert. This was a great talk. And it is, as someone who is an expert in financial business development and marketing, for anyone looking to do fundraising for their startup or starting a new company with, like you said at the very beginning, a pitch deck or something, having this unbiased data is truly important to build that storyline for the marketing and bringing on investors. Because like you said, when you're asking your own clients or consumers or your own focus group, a lot of the data can be biased. And I think it's really important what you just mentioned here, particularly from the fundraising aspect.
You want a job in marketing? We would love to have you, because that was exactly, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Maybe you guys should be my next client.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Thanks.